Hey guys, Mike Dillard here, and I am joined by my good friend Blair Dunkley for a very special episode of this podcast. We're doing it on audio and we're also doing it on video. So if you'd like to watch it instead of just listen, please head to my YouTube channel to check it out. And this is a follow-up episode to last week's biggie. So last week's episode was probably the most important one that I've ever put out on the show, where it really went through in detail. We had a big guest panel with myself, Aubrey Marcus, my doctor, and my good friend Christina, about the brain injury that I experienced last June 2018, that came out of the blue. We couldn't figure out what caused it. And essentially, it took away my ability to sleep for about a year, almost killed me. And it was a year filled with trying anything and everything that I could to get my body out of fight or flight mode, where it had now gotten stuck. To turn off my adrenal glands, which were on 24/7, and to really just allow me to get into sleep. Those therapies included MDMA, ketamine, EMDR, neurofeedback, hypnotherapy, at least 10 or so different modalities. And what was really interesting is that through using those different therapies, I got my head back in a really good spot because my limbic brain had been stuck in the on position and it was just in fight or flight 24/7. And I got my body in really good shape. And yet my body was still stuck in fight or flight. I was still buzzing with adrenaline and cortisol 24/7. And after that prolonged of a period with your body in that condition, your cells are using so many different resources to produce cortisol and produce adrenaline. It starts to literally eat away your body's protein and collagen. I was starting to get arthritis. My body was shutting down. And this was about 10 months into the process. And I had made so much progress, and yet my body was still stuck in this fight or flight stage. And so, Blair, you and I caught up at a friend's wedding a few months ago. That's when I kind of filled you in on everything that had been going on. Yeah. And fortunately, you were very kind enough to start working with me on a weekly basis to get my brain stuck out of fight or flight and back into a normal state of being, if you will.
Yep.
And you gave me a specific mind model and a mental exercise to do one day that I used over the next 24 hours. That is the one and first thing and only thing that got my body out of that state, which blew me away because this wasn't a medicine. It wasn't a substance. It wasn't anything really, deep or crazy. It was just a mental exercise.
Yeah.
And after I went through it and used it about 12 different times over a day-long period, my body just stopped for the first time in a year. And it was absolutely unbelievable. So if you haven't heard last week's episode, please make sure that you go and do that. We ended up figuring out what caused the injury, which was a household toxin that is in your home right now. You're breathing it in right now. It's simply a matter of your exposure level, and it's deadly. So if you haven't listened to that, go back and listen to it. This is our follow-up episode because, Blair, I wanted to have you come on and share the exercise that you taught me and a couple of the other different amazing mind models that you've spent your career developing that have saved people's lives. Tons of lives from potential suicide, people with PTSD, and people who just get stuck in trauma loops or limbic loops that they really can't get out of. And you've just developed this kind of miraculous system for getting people or giving them the ability to change the way that their brain works and to become really, really effective at what they want to do. And this is something that you now do for health reasons, for people who need help, but also from a performance perspective. So you work with Fortune 500 CEOs,
yes,
very successful entrepreneurs, to give them the mind models they need to get unstuck from where they're at and to essentially level up their careers. So thanks for joining us today. Much appreciated.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah. So let's dive back into when you and I caught up on the beach in Mexico at Tim's wedding. And we hadn't seen each other in a few years. We've known each other for about 10, but we haven't caught up or seen each other in person in quite a few. What was the first thing that you saw about me and my condition that was different?
Well, numerous things. Just sort of doing a quick flashback.
Yeah.
Your speaking pattern had changed, your cadence, your projection of self-confidence had shifted to confidence, and that's different. And for those of you, I mean, this is one of the fundamental things that I listen to. Confidence is others identifying your successful use of skills, attitudes, and behaviors, and self-confidence is you identifying your own effective use of skills, attitudes, and behaviors. That's one of the early mind models that I had to develop or define. Actually, not really develop, just define it. And your language pattern had shifted. And it's a subtle shift, but it's a big one, especially for somebody who is on the go like you. The next thing that I noticed was how you were no longer evaluating on the fly. You were almost cautious and timidly stating information. Your tone had shifted sufficiently rather than being here and just presenting like you just did with self-confidence, which is great to hear again. And you've got that smile and that pleasure and that look like, hey, I'm here. I'm happy to be here. You go back and you listen. And I recall hearing this cautious approach to the same words would come out of your mouth. I almost guarantee it, but how you say it would be very different. And that was a big deal for me because something was significantly off. And then we chatted and you shared. It wasn't the same Mike that I knew. It was a different version of who you are. So anyway.
So, essentially my brain got stuck in what was called the limbic loop.
Yeah.
And that's where the fear-based centers of your brain were just on in fight or flight 24/7. Yep. That means creativity was shut down. Just about any other side of my brain that would do any kind of creative or critical thinking was gone.
Yeah.
And it was just fear-based all the time. So when we got back, we started doing calls each week, and you started to give me some mental models to use and ways to start thinking about things. And so I would love it if you could take us through the big one, which was the visualization technique that you gave me to start to use, which is really what got me out of that. And it was such a miraculous deal. It just blew my mind after so many different therapies that I had tried. For a mental exercise to pull my body out of that place was astounding. So what was that exercise? What was the purpose of it? And let's, if we could, walk people through it.
Well, it's a model that I tested and developed from some other training that I took, but the framing model that I gave you was how to re-visualize yourself. See, when people get stuck in issues like what you just got stuck in, they don't think they have control. Like, did you think you had control?
No.
Like, there was no sense of you having any ability to change this, correct?
Yeah. Correct, yeah.
And that's the piece of this that almost everybody that I've dealt with over the years, they give up their perceived control because, well, sometimes it's doctors and everything else, but ignoring the professionals, but because it's their own internal belief that they don't have control because their body would never do this to themselves. Their brain would never do this to themselves. They can't be doing this to themselves. But in my research and working with literally thousands of people with mental health and stress disorders of all types, I found that, you know what, this is just a belief, and the belief is managed based on how, well, they have the belief, and the belief is that they don't have control, so they don't do any behaviors, they don't try to take charge of anything, so that just stays locked in.
Yeah, the way I would describe it from my experience was, when it's it's very hard to be aware of something different. Like, it's like trying to tell a fish about water, right? So,
or the discovery of air.
Yeah,
Like
it's
it's
just,
always around us.
yeah. So it's almost like an invisible enemy that you're battling, where it's not easy to spot, and it's not easy to identify. I could identify that, yes, my body was in a very difficult place and I was not sleeping, which, so of course my mental acuity is going to be off. But above and beyond that, it's hard to see the problem. And so you could see it instantly.
Yes.
And so what is the exercise that you took me through? And I thought it was really interesting that you didn't really tell me what you were doing until we had already gotten a result from it. But you were reducing the amount of activity in my limbic brain and
Yes.
re-engaging different areas of my brain, the visual cortex and things like that. But let's walk people through the exercise and how it works.
Okay, so basically, it's a framing exercise where you take a look at it, and a frame is a thing that goes around a picture. We all know that. But what happens if we contain the fear, the trauma, the whatever it is that you got? What happens if we just visually contain it? And some of you guys out there, try not to pick your big problem. If you're going to join us and do this on the go, try and just dial it down and make it a problem on that. If you have a 1 to 10 scale and your trauma is a 10, don't take anything bigger than a 6. Okay, just sharing. Let's get some practice under your belt first. Let's keep it safe. Okay, now it should not, well, I have never had, in doing this hundreds of times, I've never had it go dramatically negative. It either doesn't work or it works. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't do more damage, other than the fact that people are disappointed. But other than that minor disappointment, which will pass, it doesn't make anything worse. So number one, this is a very safe model. And if you happen to stumble across something, we're going to get you to be able to reach out and talk to me if you need to. But the point here is to start off with, what you want to do is you want to just visualize, see the image of that situation. If it's a still picture, it's a still picture. If it's a movie, it's a movie. And what you want to do here is just have that in your brain and, have it out there and create that image in front of you. So to like at, 5 to 6 feet away from you. See if you can't see it, that it's outside of you, not in your head, but outside of you. Once you've done that, I just want you to stop and pause for just a second there and feel if there's a slight shift between having it in your brain or having it outside of you. And that's actually one of the things that I knew this would work with you, Mike, the second that I asked you that question and you went, yeah, there is. And it was like the look on your face was almost like surprise. Like, go ahead.
So when I was doing this, I would lay down, close your eyes, and for me, it was just take the first fear that popped into my head, and that's what I went with. I didn't target anything specific. I'm just like, okay, let's go with that one.
Yeah.
And I would visualize it as if I was breathing it out. So I would take a deep breath and I would do a nice long slow exhale, and I would picture it coming out of my mouth and then just be on that screen in front of me a few feet away.
Exactly. That's one of many visualizations that you can do. You can do the breathing one. You can do, some people like projecting it through the top of their head, where it's sort of like a cloud that they move over top. Other ones just sort of make it manifest it in front of them. And it comes up like on a TV screen or a big screen TV, whatever it is. It doesn't really matter, just so long as it's external from you. That's the first piece. Because if it's not external from you in your mind, then it still is in control and you're not. So you have to start teasing it out of you to get that barrier. Anyway, once you've got it there, the whole piece of this is to get control of the fear, of the concern, of the image, whatever is happening there. You want to name and label it. You want to put a number to it on a scale of 1 to 10. How big is it? Preferably, like I said before, make it like a 6. to practice your first one or two on, and then you can tackle the big ones. But you wind up putting it out there. Now, what you want to do is you want to have it out there, and then you want to move it back into your head and have it come back into you, and that's there so that you can see it like in your mind and have it there, or feel it. Some people have difficulties actually visualizing it, but they can feel it. And other people have created it like a ball that's a multicolored ball, but they know what it is. It's a very specific thing. They have a visual representation of an emotional bundle, and they can move that thing in and out. I don't care what you do. That package of how you define it is not as relevant as moving it back out and back in and out. And I want you to move it in and out to the 6 feet mark about 5 or 6 times until
you want to feel when it comes back into you. You want to feel that fear again.
Yeah, you do.
Out of you, you want to let that go again. Right?
Yeah, because I want your brain to start training itself on the differentiation.
Okay.
And on top of that, I want you to notice who's in control, because you're actually starting to gain control over your fear because you're moving it out, you're bringing it back in. Okay, now, once you do that 5 or 6 times at about 6 feet, I want you to make it huge, like a movie theater, really, really big. And I want you to be sitting, row 3, 4, 5, whatever, first row, don't care. But there's distance. There's like 15, 20 feet at least between you and that, and it's blown up big time. And you're seeing yourself in the picture or feeling yourself in that picture. So you now feel a distance between you and yourself in the picture, and you can get a felt sense separation. That's another layer of separation. So I want you to be able to do that, bring it up, bring it back down into the TV in front of you, move it back up, bring it to the TV. And then if you want to, you can practice pulling that back right inside of you and then move it back out if it's not comfortable yet. But if you're okay with it, TV to full screen, do that 5 or 6 times, then get up and visualize yourself walking into yourself in the picture when it's big. Now, if you're starting to get too stressed around walking into that picture when it's really big, then practice moving it back and forth more times. Okay? But if you're okay with it, get up, walk into the picture of yourself, play that role, then step out and watch yourself in that role, that you're going through that event. And then walk back into yourself and notice the emotional shifts that happen to you when you've disassociated yourself from yourself and then reassociated yourself in there. You should be feeling more of your concern, more of your fear, more of the emotion, whatever that is, when you're associated, less when you're disassociated. Not likely zero yet by any stretch of the imagination. So you got to be able to do that. Okay, then put yourself back down in the audience and then collapse the entire screen back into not a big screen TV, but a very small TV, and make it relatively close, like arm's lengths away so that you can hold it, somewhere in this size, 6 inches or so by 6 inches. And then once you get going big and small, do the big and small thing. Again, 3, 4, 5 times, and do it as quickly as you can, but don't rush it. Like, it's got to be easy for your brain to do it. If it's not easy, concentrate on it. Okay. And then when you bring it back down to that 6-inch size or so, shrink it down and you can shrink it down to 4 inches or 2 inches. I don't care. Just so long as there's an image on there, that's fine. Now, take that small image and wrap it into a ball. Some people, few of them, wrap it into a cube, don't care, ball, whatever. Recognize the color. For some reason, about 80% of the people turn it into a silver ball, tends to work well, but I've had white, purple, red, multicolored, you name it, and it doesn't really matter. a couple of cubes as well. So again, I don't care. Doesn't matter. It's the fact that you're getting control over the shape. You're getting control over that. And the silver color tends to be the like a silver ball bearing, and make it something that is like a large marble, or a golf ball size, not much larger than a golf ball, please. Okay, with that, again, expand it back out, back down, and then you can go right back to expand it out to the TV side, the small TV, the large TV, back onto the screen, back to the large TV, the small TV, and back to the golf ball. And do that 2 or 3 times. Now it should be easy for you to just do it. Now, take that ball and move it away from you, just across the room. So it's now, a good distance, but it's there. And
let me ask you
please.
A clarifying question. So let's just say I would picture a chrome like silver ball.
Yep.
What happened for folks with the image that they were imagining on their screen, right? Their scary scenario or whatever it may be. How is that? Is that in the ball?
That collapses, as sort of like you take all of that mental information and you collapse it into and make the ball out of that information. So it's all of your emotion, it's all of your memory, it's all of your images, all the feelings, everything that you have around that is represented now by the ball and is inside that ball.
Right.
And that packaging of that is the first stage of you making clear separation. And you now have clear control.
So what I would imagine was a silver chrome ball, and I would take that little itty bitty screen and I would drop it in the ball, and then I would seal the ball up.
Perfect. Okay. That's completely legit. I don't care the method that your brain says to do it. You coming up with your own method, though, is better than trying to follow mine exactly.
Yeah.
That's the point. It's what works for you and your brain is what works for you and your brain. Okay? So when people say, well, you didn't do that right, you didn't follow the... No, bullshit. Your brain is telling you, this is how I want to do it. This is how I need to do it. I gain control by putting it into the ball. I gain control by wrapping all this stuff in, and the ball sort of absorbs everything. I get control by having this thing sort of turn into a cloud of mist and being absorbed by this thing that's sort of like a sponge. And then once it's in there, it's sort of like, zoom, it goes hard. Like, these are all the stories that I've heard of people telling me how their brain. And
I just want to make sure that people understand. Like, oh no, wait, I didn't catch that part. Am I going to do this wrong? But that was great.
No. It's very difficult to do it wrong.
Okay.
The difficult part here is quitting too soon. So people go, well, this isn't going to work for me. Well, it shouldn't work yet. Okay.
Well, and we'll get into that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so we've got it. So we've got it in a ball.
Yeah.
And what are we going to do with that sphere now?
Well, now we're going to move it, like I said, across the room and back, and then across the room and back. And what you want to do, go ahead.
Do you want to feel again as it's going away or further?
Well, when you put it across the room, I want you to test and see how the distance shifts your emotional connection. To your problem, to your fear, to whatever it was that is now captured in that ball. And what you wind up doing is just notice that. And so 2 or 3 times, and try to do it, or up to 6 times, and do it as quickly as you can do it. And then once you do it, pick a spot where you know is about a block away or 2 blocks away or a good distance, and shoot it out there and have it there. Then bring it back and follow it in your mind, if you can, in the flight path, so that you sort of get a sense of seeing it moving out there and coming back to you. The more it's traveling. Yeah, the distance that it's traveling. Because the weird part about it is people say about problems that time heals all wounds. And the cool thing that I don't think I discovered this. I don't know if somebody else did or not. I don't think I'm unique this way. But distance in the brain acts like time. So the more distance you can put between something, the more it feels like time has passed, or you're controlling time in your brain. And when you shoot that ball away, you can bring it back. And when you get really good at this, you can literally take that ball and pop it, like just mentally, almost instantaneously have it appear a block away, then do it 2 blocks away, then do it a mile away, then do it 2 miles and 5 miles, and then do it, across the country or whatever, some large distance. And just do that, 3 or 4 different sets of these things so that you can just get control over it. Now, once you've got that, bring it back. And what we're going to do is we're going to build a box for it. And this box, okay, any questions here, Mike? Any?
No, so we did that process for me. I would end up sending my little ball to Houston, Texas on the top of a building. And when I'm imagining that, I've driven to Houston many times. So I'm just picturing it in the highway that it's going down. And this is all taking place in the span of maybe 2 or 3 breaths.
Yeah.
So it's not a slow deal, maybe 5-10 seconds to get there. But that was the distance
to start off with, though, because you picked up the pace.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the key indicators that I need to go. It's the speed at which you make things travel. Because if you can't make it travel as fast as you want, you're giving it control that you need. So that's a sticking point. And that's one of the things that I then just have people practice and go, no, not fast enough. Make it go faster. So no, it's got to be almost instantaneous. And sure enough, I've never had anybody not be able to move it like boom and back, after 5 or 6 attempts. But I've had a couple people after 5 or 6 attempts, and without me intervening, it's just a lazy, meandering thing going back for. No, you've got to be in control. You got to make it go there. You got to make it come back. It snaps to you. And then that's how come I like it when people can just pop it there and bring it back, like instantaneous. Your mind is like magic. Like everything is happening in your imagination. So there is no distance. There's only thought. So it moves at the speed of thought.
Yep.
So you control that. Is that clear?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, so we want to build a box. And we don't want to build just one box, but we're going to build layers of boxes around this thing. We're going to put it in there. Now, some people have to respect the ball. Other people don't. Some people build a soft cushion for it. That's fine. One lady, red velvet cushion, plopped it right in the middle. It was very nicely done. She needed to describe this to me in detail, and she closed the lid slowly on it so it didn't disturb anything. But then she locked it. Then she immediately put that into a box that's sort of like a cash box or a safety deposit box, something that was steel and metal with a key that she absolutely locked. In fact, it had 2 keys. That's how come it stuck to me as a safety deposit box. Then she took that and placed it inside of a wood crate packed with straw. And she wrapped that up, pounded the nails in, and did it. Yep, I got that done. Then she took the crate and put it inside a large steel box, welded like plate metal, sort of like armor plate, like good 3/4 inch or inch thick steel, welded up all the sides so that there was no opening, put that into sort of like a concrete sarcophagus and poured in concrete all around the steel and finished the top and instantly hardened it. Great. Okay, that was enough for her. She was good with that. Do whatever you need to do. Don't make it one layer. Make it multi-layers. Now, we're going to find a place to put it. Now, I'm going to give you my place where I put my stuff. And it tends to work very well. I've had no accidents in my lifetime. And everybody who does, I'll tell you the stories before I figure this one out in a sec. But I put everything on the backside of the moon. How come the backside of the moon? Because the backside you never see. Great. So I never have to look at it. Do I know where it is? Yes. Can I figure out in my mind where it is? Yes. Am I going to trip on or knock it over and somehow magically open up all of the boxes and everything and have that thing spring back into my life and create all kinds of havoc? Not easily, let's put it that way. Is it remotely possible? Sure. But it's not an easy thing to do. So I ask people to send it to the backside of the moon. And some people have a tough time finding the spot on the backside of the moon. So I ask them to practice that 2 or 3 times. Most people can do it first time, like almost everybody does it first time. And we just leave it there. Now, if you go, well, I want it safe and I want it in that nice little padded box and it's got a small little lock on it and I'm going to put it in my shelf, in my closet. I've literally had this happen where somebody was digging through their closet for real. Their closet was pretty packed up top. A bunch of things fell down. And for some reason, mentally, she was now upset by the same problem that she had previously.
Yeah.
Guys, do not do this. And that has happened way more than once. So you want to move it to a safe place. You want multiple boxes. You want to seal it up. You got to move it, preferably backside of the moon.
Yep.
Okay. That's the exercise. And at that point, you're probably moved from a 6 to a 1 or 0. If it's a 2 or less, I don't bother moving. Like if that little round ball doesn't get down to a 2 on a scale of 1 to 10, doesn't get down to at least a 2, I keep on managing it till it gets down to a 2. I don't put it in a box until it's at least 1 or 0.
Okay. So that's how you're measuring your success.
Yes.
Is based on scale.
You just feel the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love your face on that one. And you go, yep. It's like, it's a very knowing. Yep.
Yeah. So just to give everybody some context around what my experience was with this methodology is I could instantly feel the difference from the very first moment you took me through this. But it was an incremental one, and it didn't stop really anything going on in my body. I felt relief, but it wasn't significant enough to make a system-wide change. And
Correct.
So that night at bed, I just started doing it over and over again. And it would probably take about 5 minutes. I never timed it. I'm just guessing about 5 minutes after you do this once or twice to go through the whole timeline.
Yep.
And it was exhausting.
Yeah.
Mentally, it was exhausting because I would do it once and then, okay, that memory or fear event is gone. And then what's the next one? Okay. I just, again, without judging it or thinking about it, like, oh, that's really interesting that popped up. Great. Go through the whole exercise with that one.
Yeah.
I probably did it 7 or 8 times the first night before my brain just couldn't handle it anymore. You're just burning so many calories. And I would find that it was very easy for my brain to want to meander off somewhere else and think about something else while I'm doing this. And I would physically have to force myself to nope, we're going to finish this. A lot of times I would get halfway through it and just want to quit. And I'm like, nope, we're not stopping until we finish the full timeline here with this one. And then I can stop after that and take a break.
I just want to build on that. That is a very important point.
Yeah.
Quitting in the middle is not really an effective option. That is the one thing that people that I've seen that claim it didn't work for them, that's one of the things that they almost invariably did, is that whole stopped in the middle.
So if you find yourself getting distracted and your mind is meandering, force it back in, grab it back and pull it in until you finish that one. And then if you need to take a break, take a break. So at the end of that night, I felt I could tell it was making a difference. But I was still in fight or flight. So I did the same set the next morning. As soon as I woke up, I just started going through that again. I probably did another 5, 6, 7 times. And I don't know, I don't remember the, the fears of them. The last time I did it, all I know is that all of a sudden my body just stopped buzzing and it just fully relaxed for the first time in almost a year. And the cortisol stopped, the adrenaline stopped, and it just got quiet for the very first time. So after 10 months of a dozen different therapies, this one mental exercise is the one thing that finally got that to stop, which was life-saving for me. So this is hugely, hugely effective at dealing with anxiety, dealing with any kind of fear, dealing with trauma.
Yes.
And I would also visualize when I was doing some of these, my nervous system. So if you've ever seen an image from a health website or whatever of your nervous system pulled out of a body where it's just a bunch of white lines going through all of your limbs, right? I would visualize that nervous system and the biology of it buzzing on how it was buzzing. And I would breathe it out, and I would literally just pull the nervous system out of my body as an image and feel it buzzing, and I would pull it out, and then it would just calm. And like that buzzing and that emotion, I would just visualize that and take it through the exercise. And that was also hugely, hugely effective. And so it wouldn't surprise me at all if this could work for pain.
Oh, I've done it with people for pain. Yes.
Yeah.
It does work for pain.
Yeah. So you can take the physical symptom that you have and visualize it and pull it out of you, and you would probably be shocked at what could happen. And then the final point that we've mentioned a couple of times here that I really just want to drive home is that it took at least a dozen cycles of me going through this exercise before I got that super dramatic result. You're probably not going to have a result that's dramatic unless your body was stuck in the same mode mine was in. But you'll, from the moment you start this the first time, you will feel a difference in the level of your anxiety and stress as it's being reduced as you go through this for the very first time.
Yeah.
So that was amazing. So thank you, Blair, obviously, for teaching me that and being there for me in that way. And then after that, so we got my body to relax.
Yes.
We still needed to rewire my mindset, if you will, which had been, if I use an analogy for this, it's like I caught a virus, a software virus in my head that just took over my thought process and just dominated that. And so I literally had to go through a retraining process with you.
Yes.
Retrain my brain not to see things through a lens of fear and whatnot. And so what did we do for that? And I'm specifically talking about the journaling exercise that you had me go through each night.
Well, we have an exercise in Rewiring Your Mind and Rewiring Your Mind for Wealth. I strongly recommend doing this exercise, and it's based on one of the mind models. And the mind model is evaluation versus judgment. Now, one of the key elements here is you need to know that evaluations are always 100% of the time externally verifiable. So if you're getting an opinion about yourself, and even if it's a positive opinion, it doesn't matter. It's still an opinion. And opinions are internally generated. It's not externally verifiable. That means it's a judgment. So we want to stay away from judgments. We want to focus on externally verifiable data points. And we want to be able to take those data points and work with them effectively. And effectively versus ineffectively. And I use the word effectively because I also want people to get away from the language of right, wrong, good, or bad, because all of right, wrong, good, or bad is actually judgmental language. So if you did good, you can always do bad. But effective doesn't mean that you could always have done it ineffectively. It means, well, I could be more effective. I could have been less effective. I could have been ineffective, but I was effective, and some range of effective. And so playing around with all of these word meanings and diagnosing what they actually do, well, discovering what they do, is really the key to how mind models work. So what I do is go with effective and ineffective, go with judgment versus evaluation, stick with the evaluation side, and do the exercise, the journaling exercise called a 3-2-1. So the 3-2-1 is write down at the end of the day 3 things that you did effectively that worked for you, 2 things that did not work for you, and 1 thing that you're willing to change. And do it in that order, please. Train your brain to look for what worked first, not what didn't work. Okay? What worked? 3 things. 2 things that didn't work, and quit after 2 things. Okay? And this is the other part of the exercise. You could probably do a lot more things, write down a lot more things that didn't work than that worked during the day for you. The point is I want your brain to start focusing on what is working for you, not what's not working for you. And what's not working for you, I want to quit after 2, because you're probably used to, as I just said, beating the crap out of yourself and finding a whole ton of things. But you got to learn to shut that off, not ignore it, but control it. Okay? And then find 1 thing, just 1 thing that you're willing to change tomorrow.
Can you walk us through just a specific example or of those 6 things, right? And you can use some of mine that we went through. I would always go to a judgmental perspective,
Yes.
right? And you'd catch. So can you give people some examples of that? Because it's really hard to see for yourself sometimes.
Sure. So one of the things that people do is they get into this language pattern of going, well, why did I do this? Like, boy, am I ever an idiot. And, you got to stop right there. And by the way, you can say what's effective, or you can interchange the word what or words what worked there. Okay. So what did I do that worked today? And make a note of it. And if it's something as simple as getting out of bed, start there. But if it's better than that, opt for the more effective. So you want to go for, well, geez, I did all my calls today, or I got up and went and visited a friend today. I went and engaged with, people around me today, as opposed to being a hermit, or I was real today. And I know that because I smiled at 3 people and they smiled back. Those types of things. So those are things that worked. What didn't work? You want to be specific, and you want to make it behavioral as you can. I did not get myself together as quickly as I needed to today, which forced me into rushing, and I don't want to do that. Okay, next, I want to stop being so judgmental on myself. And right there, you should stop, because I was getting into that mode there, and I was going to say, I want to stop being as judgmental as myself. I want to stop beating myself up. I want to be more effective with myself. I don't like, and see how it just all sort of falls out of my mouth? You have to stop yourself and write these things down. It's easier when you write things down to stop yourself than if you're talking or just thinking about it. And then focus on that 1 thing that I want to change. Well, I want to get up in a timely fashion. I want to do that. And that timely fashion means I want to expand this slightly to define timely fashion. I want to create a routine of getting up in the morning. That's the 1 thing I want to do at a specific time.
The question you gave me that I really resonated with was, what might I do differently tomorrow?
Exactly.
And that is really powerful to me, because it gets you back focused on creating an effective, positive event tomorrow, right? So it gets your mind back focused on the right path, right? When you're going through this process, what are you doing with your emotion when you're doing this? For example, when I write down the 3 things that were effective that day, do I want to feel a positive confidence emotion when I'm writing those down? Does that matter? Do I not?
When you start off with, it doesn't really matter. But
Okay.
I just want your brain. It depends where people start. And if you start where you're really beating the crap out of yourself, just start. And then after like a day or two or three, or at the end of that week, and you review them, then notice, how do you feel that you've got like 21 after 7 days? You've got 21 things you did effectively. You've got 14 things that didn't work, and you've got 7 things that hopefully you've changed, and you're starting to notice a cascade event of change in your life. So when you ask yourself that thing, what might I do effectively tomorrow? You're starting to build on that success pattern. And I also go specifically. So what might I do specifically now to make tomorrow more effective? What's the one thing I can focus on right now, going to bed, to make tomorrow more effective? And that's where I'd suggest that you leave it.
So fill people in on how the brain is wired. Since I put out that podcast last week with that whole story, I had a ton of people reach out to me, text, email, whatever,
Right.
that were very grateful that I was willing to share what I shared. And 2, were very vulnerable with where they're at and what they're dealing with. Quite a few people dealing with a lot of depression and or trauma from abusive relationships, whatever it may be. And, for me, this was a really effective way to get yourself out of a funk, which I think people who are going through real depression, it's very real and they're stuck in it. Right. So
Absolutely.
does this methodology, can it help people who are dealing stuck in a depressed state start to pull themselves out of it?
It can. It's not the scenario that you went through, not with the fact that it was toxins or whatever. It's the fact that your language pattern had shifted dramatically and you were stuck in a pattern. And so whenever somebody is actually stuck in a pattern and they can't get out of it, this methodology works very well. So it's not the only one that I use. And a lot of people don't recognize their time tense of where they're talking. And one of the things that in your language pattern was also past future. But you had past that was of where you used to be and how you want to be in the future, but no now. And people who are in a depressed state don't really have a now, except by smashing, sort of smushing together their past and their future. And they don't feel in control because you can't change your past. Your future hasn't happened and you've got no control over that. So you're feeling very powerless. But if you notice about that exercise these 2 exercises are about getting you present. You can only make change in the present. And so making that ball fly back and forth, putting it on the far side of the moon, all of that stuff is happening now in your brain. And I'm getting you to train your brain to have a now, of some place where you can actually be in control. Talk therapies don't necessarily do that. Drugs may or may not do that. It's completely circumstantial. It might make you feel better, and that's good, but accidentally you're going to bring yourself more to now because you're feeling better, because you don't have to deal with all the past crap and all the future crap and worry about that and all of the stuff in between. You're okay just living for a second, and that brings you to now. So that's the differentiator right there. And everything that I do is about finding language patterns that help you get yourself in control of you in the present moment. That's what it all does. Evaluation versus judgment. Judgment is past future. Evaluation, yes, it's past stuff, but when are you doing the evaluation? Right when you're doing the evaluation and you're making a determination. And the second you make that determination, notice how you feel. Boom, you feel better. And that's the differentiation.
So there's some things that, some questions you gave me to ask myself when I was going through this that I think is really useful for folks, specifically in this. So one of the questions to help you evaluate instead of going into judgment was, am I okay right now?
Exactly.
Right. So you can be in a really shitty spot, but you're still physically fine. You're safe. You're in your home. You're in your bed. Right?
Well, this goes into another mind model. It's called safety versus comfort. And a lot of people blend the whole, like, most of these things are mind models, are distinctions that help people separate one concept from another. But people who are depressed have tended to, and a real technical term here, smush things together. So you really nest them up by putting them together and smushing them, and all of a sudden we got to separate. So the key thing here is safety versus comfort. People think that because they're uncomfortable, they're unsafe. Not necessarily so. And so asking that simple question, am I okay right now? Right now, not will I be okay? Am I okay right now? Brings it to the present. Am I physically at threat right now? Well, I might be worried, I might be panicking, but is that in my mind or is that around me? Is it physical? That separation takes it from, it's uncomfortable in my mind, but am I physically unsafe? No, I'm not unsafe. Okay, so let's deal with that and figure out what to do next.
So those were the two methodologies that you gave me that made a huge difference. And real quick, talk about timelines and expectations and how people's brains work from an average perspective, right? That you taught me, where I was like, man, I feel like I'm making a lot of progress, but then I'd have a down day, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, right?
Yeah.
And you help set expectations around the length of time your brain takes to adopt these new belief systems, habits, and patterns.
Well, it all depends on how you are and how effective you are with practice. Because what we've got to do is it's like training, physically going out there and training. So you got to train for this stuff. And the bottom line here is it depends on how much training you put in. If you're putting in and being consistent every single day, you're going to get more predictable results. If you do it 2 or 3 times a day, you're going to get there faster. If you do it once a day, that's fine too. If you do it once a week, so long as you're consistent and you're going to do it, you're going to get there eventually. But the cool thing about this is I have yet to see somebody not get there. And well, that's not true. I've seen people not get there because they quit. So if you don't do it, it doesn't work. You can't just know it. You actually have to do the behaviors. This is about changing your behaviors, not changing thoughts in your head. It's changing how you think, not what you think.
Very
and
good.
That's the difference.
So obviously this can work in some ways that can be used by people who are in a pretty nasty spot, but
Yes.
You can also use a lot of these mind models that you've developed for folks who are already high performers, but maybe they keep hitting a glass ceiling and they keep getting to the $1 million mark, but they can't, for some reason, for the last 10 years, get to 10 mil, or they're stuck at 10 mil and they can't get to 100.
Yep.
And so what do you typically see happening with individuals like that who keep running into a ceiling?
You know what? Honestly, the glass ceiling issue is something that I work with a lot, working with CEOs and the like. Their belief is the thing that they now believe is the way that it is. And I don't like working with beliefs because beliefs are sort of mindset based. And I believe this about myself. Well, what does that belief, how did you make that belief happen in the first place? It's behavior based. Every belief is generated from either yours or adopted from somebody else's behaviors. I'd rather put myself in charge. And I got a big long story about how come I used to be a mindset trainer and my dad went into a coma, it didn't work. And I then started researching mind models because my trainer told me that I didn't believe enough and I was hurting real bad. And I go, I was believing the best I could, and mindset just did not work for me. So for me, I needed a behavior-based thing that works regardless of what I believe and regardless of how I feel. And that's the power of the mind models, because it gets you to walk yourself through a process. That process engages your brain and your body to behave differently. When I'm working with CEOs, I listen to their beliefs, and they believe that what they're doing should get them to that next level. I mean, duh, of course they do. But if you listen to the patterns long enough and see as many people as I have over the years, you start realizing, hold it, what they're doing is believing this, but how they're behaving is this. And that behavior is the thing that's not going to get them to what they want to believe in. So let's stop the belief thing. Let's start evaluating the behavior, because they've made a judgment about how things should be. And it's not about how things should be, it's about how things are and what's stopping them. And once they start breaking it down, like, okay, safety versus comfort, judgment versus evaluation, effective versus ineffective, clarity versus certainty. People go after certainty all the time. It's probably the number one worst thing to go after is certainty. You want to go after clarity. You got to learn what the differentiation is, and that's part of the mind models. The question concepts, huge, huge. Stay out of why. People are big on why these days. And frankly, I will limit myself to one other phrase here, and then I'll stop, because I will talk for hours on this topic. You know me. First of all, I hate whys, and whys hold you stuck because they're 100% past based. You cannot change your past. And I can prove that.
And I was there all the time. Every time we talked, I would immediately go back to whys. And
absolutely.
so the tell, if you will, right, of so that you can identify when you go into a why, I will just say, is typically the moment you say the word because.
That's one of them. Yep.
Are there a couple of others?
Yeah, there's any time you load your emotions first, and it tends to be negative emotion. When you're loading emotion big time and you're like puffing up and getting, you're going to be ready to give reasons, excuses, rationalizations, or justifications. Any one of those four or all of those four in whatever it is, whether it's a statement or a question. By the way, question concepts are present in everything that you say and do, everything. It's a model of how information, I believe it's pathways in the brain. And there's some evidence now that the brain actually has neural pathways that are who, what, where, when, why, and how. And so when you are in that why pathway, you are right back into your limbic system. You're ready for fight or flight. You're starting to justify your behaviors to push back arguments against yourself. You're not open for change, and you're not going after curiosity.
Yeah, and well, like you said earlier, you're stuck reliving that previous memory that's got you all fired up, and you're back in that state in every way you can imagine.
Exactly. And on top of that, your brain in the neural pathways is actually, every time you use that neural pathway, you strengthen that effectiveness of that neural pathway. So it becomes thicker. It conducts more energy, well, actually less energy, more efficiently, and the neurotransmitters fire more efficiently with less energy. So it takes less effort to do that, and it just fires way faster. So that's how we create habits. So you're literally creating habits.
Yeah. So that's how people get stuck in depressed thinking.
Oh, yeah.
Bad, poor thinking patterns, reliving, again, previous traumatic experiences. And
oh, God, yeah.
It's really hard to get out of that. So, man, this has been great, Blair. For folks who are dealing with really a tough emotional experience, past trauma that you're stuck in a loop and you've been ruminating on it for years, maybe even decades. Sexual abuse when you're a child is probably a big one for a lot of people. divorce, family death, depression, whatever it may be, if you've been stuck there and you haven't been able to get out, if you're on a bunch of drugs because of it, Blair's work is really, really powerful and could probably help you get out of those states quicker than you think. So, Blair, where can folks go to get a hold of you? I asked if you'd be willing to put together kind of a VIP contact channel for my audience listeners so that they could reach out to you if they want to work with you in some capacity. So what's the best place for folks to go?
Well, blairdunkley.com/Mike. There's a link there that gives people an opportunity to fill out a quick little form and get to me so that I can talk to you. I will be handling each person personally. So please fill it out if you're interested in having a conversation with me. And then we'll take it from there. I've also put I have done a bunch of work, and it's a collection of 63 of my mind models. There's over 100 of them, but 63 was designed for a program I did with you way back whenever we started chatting 8-10 years ago, whatever. And Mike's on stage there, and back with the first time we did our thing together. And it's 63 mind models called Rewiring Your Mind for Wealth. So I sort of put that together in a unique package and brought that forward so that you could hear myself and Mike share what it's doing with him and how it's helped people around him. And you'll see some of my former students, and well, actually all of them are still friends that come up on stage and share how they worked for them. So lots of stuff.
So again, guys, that's blairdunkley.com, and the last name is spelled Dunkley. There's an E in there. So, and then /Mike, and that's kind of the VIP channel for folks to reach out, and that way you'll know that they came from my audience, and you'll kind of give preferential treatment, if you will. So thank you.
Absolutely. So basically, I'm not going to do one-on-one personal stuff with anybody else. I do it with you and your friends.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and the audience is included in that.
Oh yeah. They're like, they're your friends.
Yeah. Yeah. So
cool. Family deal. So
awesome, guys. Well, Blair, thank you so much, my friend, for everything, for all of your help this year and your support. I couldn't have made it without you. It was really a life-changing deal to get your help and support in this.
I just have to share this one quick thing here. That story that you told me, like, it was like the third evening that you did this and you just about fell asleep. And then the next day you phone me up and tell me, Blair, I just about fell asleep without any drugs, but I got so excited I woke myself up. It was hilarious and delightful. And that was just fun. Just fun. Cool. Yeah. Anyway, thanks so much.
You're welcome. All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you know anybody who's dealing with depression, anxiety, PTSD, or who is stuck at a certain performance level and you want to really up your game and break through that glass ceiling that's held you back, you've got some stories that are holding you back. You've got some language patterns that are holding you back. You're probably not even aware of them. Blair will identify them within 60 seconds probably. And he'll give you the tools you need to break through those and to transform your life in a really dramatic way. So thank you again, Blair. Love you. Appreciate you. And guys, thanks for watching as always. Please share this show and episode with anyone that you think would benefit from any of those, those different situations that someone might be in. It could literally save their life like it did for me. So thanks again for listening and watching. We'll see you next time. Take care.
Take care.